Welcome to the Black Writer Studio, a podcast presented by the Hurston Wright Foundation and hosted by Dr. Khadijah Ali-Coleman. The Black Writer Studio is dedicated to showcasing Black writers who are transforming the world today with their literary pen and creating a legacy for the culture. Ishmael Reed is a prolific and multi-talented author known for his work in novels, plays, poetry, and nonfiction. Ishmael Reed's accolades are a testament to his literary prowess. He is a MacArthur Fellow, and his nominations for a National Book Award and Pulitzer Prize underscore his impact on the literary landscape. He is also a celebrated songwriter with his compositions recorded by renowned artists. With over 30 published books to his name, his impact on the literary world is undeniable. So, first of all, I'm trying my best not to be a fangirl, and and just oh my goodness, but when I tell you that who you are as a person and as a writer is such high inspiration for me. You're such a literary icon, but even beyond that, as a person, the way that you have stood up and spoken out about certain things has been just a tremendous role model. You have been a tremendous role model for me. And so I want to say that thank you for being you. Thank you for loving Black people as much as you do. And I also want to congratulate you on being selected by the Hurston Foundation Board as our North Star awardee, which is a merit award, a lifetime achievement award, which is you're beyond deserved of that. So congratulations on that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're so welcome. So I had told you earlier that I really am interested in your thoughts and your feelings. You have a career that spans multiple decades. You're still in the midst of your career. You're still creating work. You have a play that's out now that I'm going to ask you about to close, because that's something that's actually being produced and presented now. But I'd love to get an idea from you as to what was that, if you can even point to one moment that got you on this trajectory of being of using writing to send your message out and your varied messages to the world. What was it that was the impetus for you to become a writer?
Well, I'd written materials in high school, and matter of fact, my first commission for a poet to write a poem was from my mother, who's also a writer.
Okay.
Thelma V. Reed. She wrote "Black Girl from Tannery Flats." That's on Amazon.
Okay.
And she commissioned me to write a poem when she integrated a department store. She conducted 2 strikes without the help of a union that benefited Black women workers.
Wow.
A hotel and one at the department store, where Black women were consigned to do stock work. And she protested, and she became the first salesperson for that department store. And they had a party for one of the workers, and I wrote a poem for this woman who's being celebrated.
I love that. I love that you say commission, and that you look at this as being the start of your work. So tell me, first of all, give us some context. When was this? What year was this? Do you know?
This was maybe 1952.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then I was very fortunate to work for A.J. Smitherman, who was the hero of the Tulsa Uprising in 1921.
Wow.
And we didn't know that. I didn't know that until I left town, because he was being sought by the Oklahoma authorities for sedition. They blamed the riot on him. He had
Wow.
a newspaper called the Tulsa Star, in
Wow.
which he advocated against lynching. And as a matter of fact, he used force to interrupt lynchings. He and these World War I veterans would interrupt lynchings because they were armed. And it was these armed World War I veterans who tried to save a black man who was about to be lynched. And that was the beginning of the riot. But they burned out his publishing company and his home, and his family had to flee to Boston. Then they moved to Buffalo because he wanted to be near the border if he had to escape from the United States. And so I worked for him when I was about 16. And then when he died, I went back after dropping out of college, and 29-year-old or 27-year-old named Joe Walker, who later went to work for Malcolm X, Muhammad Speaks. He and I put the paper out. So I had
Oh,
some
wow.
experience before I left Buffalo for New York.
Wow. So you said you worked for him before you even knew his history, but what were you going to work for him because you had realized that this was um that writing, when I say this, writing was something that you wanted to do, or was it because of the activist nature of the publication?
It was an accident. I was working for a Jewish drugstore owner who inspired me. What he taught me was that you find something that you like and be driven.
Mm,
And AJ taught me the same thing. But I was leaving he came to the United States from Ukraine when he was 11 years old. Carl Prater, Jewish drugstore owner, and he's the one who started the modern chain store drugstore idea,
oh,
like
wow.
and all that. He began that.
Okay.
And so I was leaving to work one night, and this man comes up in his old Packard. He's wearing a Stetson hat. That should have been a clue that he was from the West.
Right.
He said, come on and get in the car. I want you to help me deliver some papers. So we were delivering to Afro-Americans. I mean, I said, okay, sure. So I started working in his office, and he was driven. I mean, some of the most powerful people in Buffalo would come into this dingy office on Broadway in Buffalo. But,
Wow.
we parted ways. I got a trip to Paris by the YMCA. And when I came back, he couldn't handle me because I saw Africans in Paris, students at the Sorbonne, that conflicted with the way Africans are depicted in the media here and in the
Mm,
educational system. So when I came back, I said, they ain't nothing they can teach me because they lying about that. They must be lying about everything. So
right,
dropped
right.
out of high school and went to work in the library.
Oh, wow. And what did you do there in the library?
Well, I was sort of like, working in distribution where I go fetch books for people,
Okay.
my job. But I had a chance to read a lot of works, and that was the first time I encountered James Baldwin and
Mm.
Black writers, because at the university, there were no Black writers on the syllabus.
Right, right. When you think about that era, because you're at this point, it's like coming to age and you're starting to come into your own in terms of your own ideas. You have this mother who is already, even in the role that she was in the department store, she's an activist of sorts, and now you're engaging with these folks, but now you're being more discerning as to what you want to engage in. So tell me a little bit about um how what you started to look at and who your favorites became. Did you start having favorites in terms of who you were inspired by or who you read?
I'm very much influenced by Malcolm X. I met him in 1962.
Okay.
And I put I'm on Audible with three recordings they commissioned me to do. And one is called Malcolm and Me, about encountering Malcolm and his influence on my generation.
Mm,
And I also have two other pieces: The Fool Who Thought Too Much, about a conflict between the court fools and the Enlightenment in 1700s Germany, and the most recent one, which is people are looking at for possible movie rights, is called The Man Who Was Not Himself, or The Man Who Haunted Himself, which is
mm,
a Black neuroscientist. And so these are projects, but Malcolm and Me is one of those projects. So Malcolm, when I went to New York, I didn't encounter him. And the thing about Malcolm is that people don't realize he was mostly a scholar.
yeah.
And he went to a prison where there were maybe 2,000 books because some philanthropist had, donated them to the prison. I think he probably read all of them.
Yeah.
He knew Black history, but he knew about Virgil and Dante and all that too.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a poem for him, which was so bad I threw it away. He complimented me. He says, just like Dante, just like Virgil.
Oh,
So I
wow.
saw him as a scholar. He's very influential on our generation. Then I went to New York, and I was with the Umbra Society, the famous Umbra Society, which Amiri Baraka said was the birthplace of Black art, the Black arts movement.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd meet. Tom Dent was the head of it. We meet at his apartment on Second Street, and his father was the head of Dillard University. But this was his bohemian period. Hurston, whose book of poetry was just published by Wesleyan University Press. David Henderson, who wrote the definitive biography of Jimi Hendrix, and Norman Pritchett, who has really got a real cult following because he's considered one of the antecedents of the avant-garde. Lorenzo Thomas, all these guys are very famous, most dead, and some others. And that got me launched on, writing poetry. Then I had a newspaper in New Jersey. I had to write prose. And from that prose, I started writing novels. Around 1965, I started writing my first novel, The Freelance Pallbearers, which was published in 1967. And I was in my 20s. And after the book was published, I came to Los Angeles.
And that was actually where I was trying to get you to go, as to how you moved to the West Coast. But I'm fascinated with the fact that already at this point in your 20s, you've had these milestone engagements with people who, it's not just your run-of-the-mill folks. These are people who have been at the forefront of movements, whether Amiri Baraka and the Black Arts Movement. You speak of your employer, please say his name one more time, that was part of Tulsa.
It was A.J. Smitherman.
A.J. Smitherman.
And when President Biden went to Tulsa, he mentioned his name. That's incredible. This humble guy with the Stetson hat and a beat up car and everything.
That's wonderful.
And his granddaughter, who's visited my house here, Raven, great granddaughter, Raven, is trying to get compensation from the city of Oklahoma because they burned out the publishing company.
Right. They still, I know that they recently had a setback, but they're still moving forward. And the oldest survivor of that terrorism is writing a book. She has a book that's
Oklahoma's a racist city. I mean, Oklahoma is a racist state, land of the red man, right? Yeah. And Smitherman had a newspaper before the Tulsa Star called the Muskegee Star, and he advocated for the oil rights of blacks. He was always a troublemaker.
Yeah.
Because whites were getting this oil money that was supposed to go to blacks, and he advocated on the part of black people there.
And I think those are the kinds of things that are only now starting to come up, is that how that whole terrorist act really it was more to it than just the things that we've seen historically against Black people, but the land itself, how much oil and how much natural resources existed in the space, and how it had been a concerted effort to get Black people out of this space and to not be able to have access to the natural resources that existed in that area. And so I'm interested to see what is included in her book, but also what more information is going to come out around that. And I appreciate you even speaking that, so that that's something that's part of this conversation for people to go and learn more about. But from Mr. Smithery to Malcolm X. So you're now you're not even 30 yet, and these are people who have touched you, who have
absolutely.
It's incredible. So when I even think of you, I told you it's your voice. And so it's not only your written work, but just how you show up in spaces. And it's interesting because, and you say this often in so many words, about the need for Black writers, for Black people, for us to have more courage in the ways that we are showing up in spaces and advocating for ourselves and speaking truth to power. And a lot of times people will use as a defense against speaking up or out is the fear of being blacklisted or losing some type of opportunity. But your career speaks to itself that you have had such a long-standing career being consistent with speaking your truth. Can you tell me, at this point where we are in your retelling of your history, where you haven't moved to the West Coast yet, have you started to when did you start to develop or to form this way of being where you're seeing things for as they are, and you're using your writing as a channel to speak truth to power?
Well, I think I took Zora Hurston's route, which was to go to the people. I lived in a black neighborhood here since 1979 in the local inner city, so I have a different perspective on things than somebody who lives maybe in New Haven or something, or Cambridge, or a university town, places like that, or who writes about black history and culture from the Four Seasons restaurant, like these columnists in the New York Times and places.
Mhm.
And so, I've experienced the crack epidemic on my block, murders, the shootouts. People shooting at each other. I tell my wife and daughter they have to continue shopping because the coast is not clear. So I went through the whole thing. But regardless of that, about, I would say, 70% of the black kids on this block made well. Now, you don't get that from a picture of the inner city from people who look at it from 30,000 feet up,
Right.
from the newsrooms of the Times or the Atlantic Monthly or those places. And so, matter of fact, two of the kids, they come back and visit us because the neighborhood now has been gentrified.
Mm-hmm.
And so they come back and visit, and they some of them have made well. To the last two who came here, Vanessa and Olivia McClure, they live next. Their parents live next door, and one's works for the DMV Division of Motor Vehicles, and the other one is an accountant in Charleston. So I could go on with stories like that.
Right.
Their parents were two Christians. I've talked about them, and they were very suspicious of us when we first moved in here.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were the first gentrifiers. But
Mm.
when the crack thing, happened and it became dangerous to live in the neighborhood, I was the one who led the organization of the neighborhood against the crack dealers.
Mm.
The reason they didn't kill me is because they respected me. you know, so I ended up doing all these people's eulogies,
Oh,
and
wow.
one of them became a song that was uh, recorded by Robert Jason, who did Aida on Broadway, and it was about the passing of one of my neighbors. So I got a lot of
Oh,
material out of this neighborhood, like essays,
yeah.
fiction, and all that. And so
And you
I,
moved over there if you moved over there in the 70s,
1979.
right? Okay, so this was after really the Panthers, because you're in the thick of where all of that.
I,
Um,
I'm in the neighborhood where the Panthers lived.
right.
Around the corner, for example, David Hilliard grew up. Around another corner here, Bobby Hutton,
Oh,
and
wow.
they're all middle class kids. I mean, people
Right,
get the wrong impression.
right.
College students. I mean,
They were college students studying law.
right. And Bobby Seale lives on 57th Street down the block there, and I interviewed him on the day that they had Reagan's funeral. I interviewed him for a book I wrote called "The Complete Muhammad Ali," which
Wow.
is by a Canadian publisher. So I'm walking in there, and Bobby Seale is watching Reagan's funeral. And, they had the Panthers is the reason that Reagan got elected. He ran against
Right,
the Panthers.
right,
So this is
right.
an ironic twist of history. But anyway, he made me some barbecue, and we had a good time, and I interviewed him. And his interview is carried in my book, The Complete Muhammad Ali.
Oh,
So
that's
they all
fantastic.
grew up around here.
Yeah.
And Sarah Fabio, I wrote two pieces. One was about Buffalo, the Buffalo I knew, and I wrote one about the Black Arts Movement, and they both were published a few months ago in the New York Review of Books. And I talk about the history of the Panthers. I talk about the Black Arts Movement, the Panthers, and what happened in the 1960s, which
Yeah.
influenced us all. And a year before he died, Huey Newton and I appeared on a television show, and you can still get that on YouTube.
Okay, I want to check that out. I plan on using your book. In February I want to partner with a local library system to do a program around the Black arts movement, because I think the Black arts movement has inspired so many, but I would love for us to have conversation on what are the opportunities that have been missed, that we could have
Well,
learned from the Black arts movement. And I think
mhm.
I what I love about your work, and maybe you can tell me a little bit more in terms of the reasoning, because there's some things that I think that I'm making assumptions of, but one of the things that I've always noticed about your work is you will go somewhere else to have your stuff published. You will not be beholden to a publisher or a press who is going to put any restriction on your voice
Mhm.
or any of your movement in this industry. And so I would love to just get an idea from you on your thoughts around Black people publishing their work, some of the if there's a lesson, overarching lesson that you've learned in your journey when it comes to us publishing our work. Because I
Well, I
know
think
now you've moved to you have a publisher. Your publisher is out of Canada now, right?
I published my books, and I have Robin Philpott, who is a Quebec liberation a person who would like the Canadians to speak French. He ran for Parliament, but he published a few of my recent books,
Mm-hmm.
especially the essays, which were unacceptable in the United States. And when
What can you just let me know? What do you mean when you say they were unacceptable?
well, I mean I think that they believe I probably come on too strong.
Mm.
I mean, one newscaster said reading Ishmael Reed is like having a kidney stone. Well, it may
Wow.
be that way for him, but other people find my books to be comforting. But there's a situation in the United States now where, unlike the time when I began publishing in the 1960s, the salesmen have taken over,
Mm-hmm.
and so we have a situation where what they want blockbusters, and so some of our best poets, if you look at the bestsellers among Black writers, some of our best poets rank 99. I don't even recognize the people who, yeah, I mean, and in fiction, you have to go all the way to 40 to get a decent writer, uh,
Mm-hmm.
Larson. So I think that that's a problem. Now we have a out that writers of the 40s and 50s don't. Chester Himes, he lived in my house here for a summer, and when the big publishers stopped publishing him, he was done. Same thing happened with Richard Wright, Charles Wright, William Denby, who's getting a second look because I published two of his books. William Denby was a great writer, lived in Italy for many years.
Mm-hmm.
A writer who worked with Antonioni and Fellini and all these filmmakers and wrote scripts. And he's one of the best writers of the last 100 years, but he had difficulty getting his books published. And
Do you think that there was do you think that that happened because they were not able or willing to look at other routes to publish such like how you have, or because there were no other routes that existed?
the way of publishing has become cheaper. I mean, my daughter, she can publish a book in the house here,
Right,
because
right.
she went to school and was trained in Photoshop and all this kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the way of distributing your work has become easier and cheaper. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I get turned down, I was driven out of publishing by bad reviews, and that's why I had to go to Canada. And there was Sir John O'Brien. He's knighted by the French government because he published avant-garde books, and he said, you don't have to worry about sales. So he published a few of my books, published my daughter's book. She wrote a book called Califia Burning, and my most recent book of poetry, Why the Black Hole Sings the Blues.
Mm.
Were
This is
published.
just your daughter Tennessee Reed.
Yeah, uh,
Mm-hmm.
her first book was published when she was 11. So when she was she would She had more books published than the average professor. So, we all work here. So John O'Brien died. And so the future of my work was probably going to be through self-publishing. And Lucy and I put together a book. We asked people in China, Africa, and other places, Europe, United States, to tell us about their COVID experiences, the plague experiences.
Right.
And so we got a big book here, and we're publishing that. So
can I just
yeah.
I mean, you are putting out content, you put out books as if I am amazed with the amount of output that you have and how regular it is and multi-genre. And I just am in awe of this amount of output. And even as you talk now, you're like, yeah, I got another book, got more books coming out. Is there a process? Is this something where you have a goal in mind? I mean, I don't even know where to begin to ask, because this is not the norm when you talk to people, that they have this amount of output with such regularity.
Well, I think what our goal is. I founded the Before Columbus Foundation in 1976. We do the American Book Awards, which is equivalent to the National Book Awards. As a matter of fact, the Washington Post said we were the American League to the National Book Awards, National League. So we got on a rank with the Pulitzers. And on our board of directors, we have a Pulitzer Prize winner, the two former United States Poet Laureates, two MacArthur Fellows, and on and on. So, and we are diverse. We're Native Americans. And our goal has been to smash tokenism.
Yes.
Because what the New York establishment does, and they run the thing for now, although they don't have as much power as they used to have, is to select a diva and a divo. And they do that not only for Blacks, but they do it for Native Americans, Asian Americans, and others, Hispanics. And so what we've done, we've got a multicultural board where we call the shots. So, for example, on Sunday, this coming Sunday, at the Court Library in San Francisco, we do our 44th annual American Book Awards. And one of the people who is going to be given a tribute is Bell Hooks. The late Bell Hooks is being honored.
Wow! When is this?
It's coming up this Sunday.
Okay.
2:00 at the Court Library in San Francisco.
My daughter lives in San Francisco. She attends USF. I'm going to ask her to try to make it.
That'd be great. That'd be good. Nice reception afterwards. But for our book awards, people come from. We're one of the first ones to recognize Toni Morrison.
Wow.
She got the Pulitzer and all that because Gloria Naylor, Edwidge Danticat, Don DeLillo, Johnny Williams, they come to our events at their own expense.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
This is really the Writers Award. Then we got PEN Oakland, which was founded in 1989, and had the PEN Oakland Awards, which the New York Times calls the blue collar awards. I mean, unlike the PEN Oakland Pens in the East, we don't have limousines and tuxedos. What we have is a full court press to change the way Americans look at literature.
Yes.
It's not, sort of like a corporate thing, like the National Awards has on its board of directors, Ralph Lauren. I thought he made clothes,
Right. Yeah.
So what we have done is significantly changed American literature. So you don't get one person at a time. Now, Indian Country, the Native American newspaper, they observed the fact that during one year when we had the awards in Miami, 5 Native Americans received the award.
Right. Right.
So we're trying to expand people's knowledge of literature. What happened with tokenism? For example, Louise Merriweather, who's 100 years old and who's like the dean of Black writers, had to go to GoFundMe to raise money because she had COVID. She wrote as well as James Baldwin about Harlem. And as a matter of fact, she took more chances. The problem was his book was about a man, a young boy going through the rites of passage. Hers is about a young girl going through a rites of passage.
Mm.
Misogyny and the way it, literary tastes were sort of like controlled and directed at the time. Her book didn't get as much coverage, but now we know that Daddy Was the Number Runner is a classic.
Right, right. One of our former board chair actually acknowledged that we did when we were having testimonies about just why people are connected to our organization. She was saying that that book in particular is what opened her eyes to even knowing that Black people wrote books about our experiences. And so, I know that that book turned on a lot of people to just reading and seeking out those books that, as you said, weren't on the syllabi if you
Mhm.
went to school or what have you.
Mhm.
So I could ask you 50 million questions. I have so many questions, but I do want you to have an opportunity as we close out to talk about your play that is touring now. And just, I mean, do you do you plan on stopping? I don't feel
Well,
like
well,
you.
well, I got a lot of projects ahead. I just got a CD done using some of the pioneer older blues musicians because I wrote an article about the Oakland blues, which is a combination of Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas sounds. And the older generation is perishing, and the young kids like hip hop, so the blues is in trouble. So I just did a
Mm.
CD called Ishmael Reed's Blues Lyrics, where I got these old timers, and that's been released. You can get that on. It's called Ishmael Reed's Blues Lyrics, and it's distributed by Bandcamp. And
Okay.
then I did a thing called the Hands of Grace, named for Grace Bonner, the great young fashion designer in London. She flew me to London. I played the piano to back up her fashion show. So I
Wow.
got numbers on that where I play the piano and my spouse, Carla Blank, plays the violin and Roger Glenn plays the flute. So that's out from Reading Group. Reading Group. It's called Hands of Grace. And then the Slave Who Loved Caviar was published last week by uh, not Reading House, but Powerhouse Books. And The Slave Love Caviar is about the exploitation of Jean Michel Basquiat by the downtown art group. As a matter of fact, they killed him, I think.
You've
And,
written about that before.
well, this is a play, and
Okay.
it's
Oh, this is a play. Okay.
yeah, and it ran last year. I couldn't take it back to New York because of lawsuits, threatened
Mm.
lawsuits by the people who exploited them. They didn't like the way they were depicted, you say.
Right,
But
right.
the Afro Shakespeare Company did it out here. They did a reading a couple of
Mm.
weeks ago. And the conductor, which are just closed in New York after 2 runs,
Right.
I called it a living newspaper because the crisis I see is the collapse of the Black press.
Mm.
Those newspapers that I used to deliver, Afro American, Chicago Defender, Baltimore, all those,
Mm-hmm.
they were the bulletin board for the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
And because Black militants asked the Metropolitan or the standard newspapers to send Black reporters to cover their events, like Muhammad Ali and others, insisted
Mm.
these Black reporters, there was a brain drain where they went to the commercial
Mainstream, yeah.
press where they have no power.
Right.
They can always get fired, like Don Lemon and others, Melissa Harris Perry, Tiffany Cross. You go too far, you get fired.
Mm-hmm.
So, I call this play a living newspaper,
Mm.
and I kept changing the script according to news events.
Wow.
I cover the debates that are going on now, that affirmative action fiasco at Harvard, and some of these other things. I keep changing the script.
Wow.
The newspaper was a poem that was used by the WPA, Works Projects Administration in the 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans closed it down. It's considered too radical. So I'm trying to revive that. So
Oh, that's fantastic.
we have a forum where we can talk. And then I have other outlets. For example,
Right.
Emilio Guillermo has a podcast, and I'm on there tonight. I'm on YouTube tonight, where I ask questions of the panelists or the primary candidates that weren't asked the other night.
Oh, wow.
Because you had a Latina, she did great bringing up those issues, but there was a
Right.
Black questioner, and some of those people got away, like Nikki Haley. Nobody asked her, was she still supporting the subway vigilante?
Right.
This guy was and came up behind this person who was obviously disturbed, put a chokehold on him and killed him. And she said he ought to be pardoned. Nobody asked her that. And this guy, Ramaswamy, I call him Swami, he got away with murder. He said that, Kendi and all of them were like the Klan. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I've read, and
Yeah, the Ku Klux
yeah,
Klan, the Ku Klux Klan killed those 4 girls in the church bombing.
yeah,
This idiot gets up there and gives excuses for. So I mean, those questions were not asked
right,
because you didn't have a Black questioner. So that's why one way we can talk is through theater and fiction. So that's
right.
why I call my theater piece the conductor, a living newspaper, which is about the recall movement out here, where they recall a Black and a Latina from the school board, and because they were trying to make the situation fairer for Black and Latino parents by doing away with the testing and imposing a lottery system. And so they were recalled, and the corporate press says it was sort of like a grassroots movement that got them recalled. And I brought up the fact in the play that there were billionaires, right-wing billionaires behind the recall.
You remind me so much of how you use theater and your work. It reminds me so much of Boal and pedagogy, theater of the oppressed,
Mm-hmm.
out of South America, but we've taken that and based on a lot of stuff written by Paulo Freire, but just looking at the ways that art can be created from what's happening, and it actually is used as a tool to engage, but to
Right.
include folks in it. And that is what I see in your work, that you just have a legacy of wanting to wake us up and wanting us to be more engaged, and to mobilize us with you. And that's how I opened. I appreciate that.
I've been producing plays for 30 years, and Black women and Latina women and others, and Indian. I mean, the last play, this play conductor has an Indian character in it, and we had Pakistani people, and even one Filipino American was in this. They get roles that they're denied in television and film, where they get these trashy roles.
Mhm.
None of the women in my plays, since I began producing plays and writing plays, has had a role that demeans them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Just in it to add to the the reasoning why your work is so not prolific but just impactful. Do you have any places on social media where you would advise people to find out more? I know you mentioned Bandcamp, but are you active on social media, or do you engage with people anywhere?
I'm on
Um,
there too much. I'm on there too much. I get up. I feel that I have to be sort of like an ombudsman about the way lies or multiplied media. So this morning, you got that guy Hassan, who has a British accent on,
hmm
said that Black men are going to vote for Trump, and so I had to put up there that if we're not for Black male vote, Biden would have lost. So that's the myth, is that Black men are going to vote for Trump.
Right,
And
right,
80% or something like that voted for Biden. So I mean, you have to correct them, because
right,
all day they lie all
right.
day night, and we have enough people with means, especially the hip hop stars, to start something like a Black Anti-Defamation League. See, they don't get away with that because the Anti-Defamation League is an alert and they're right there. But we have
But you
nobody.
know what? I think that's what Hassan and people are looking at as representing all Black men, is because you have people
Absolutely.
like a Kanye West, or you know,
Yeah,
people who have shown affinity for Trump. And so that now is these few
yeah,
black male celebrities. So now all black men are going to be voting for Trump. So
yeah. They collectivize the black experience on the basis of
right,
individuals. Always, they do that.
right.
So I just want to say also that we have published probably many more black women than Ms. Not only in the United States but in South Africa. My publisher in one of my publishers in England is a black woman, Alison Busby, and so we published. When I went to Nigeria, I came back and published. My spouse and I, Carla Blank, we published 16 short stories by Nigerian women and sold it to the Egyptian Center of Translation, and it was translated to Arabic.
Oh, wow.
So I want Gloria Steinem to follow my lead. If she believes that black women are oppressed, set up a publishing company and start publishing them.
Yes, yes. Where can people, are you taking submissions or is it by invite only? How do you?
I think it's probably invite only because we're very few means. We don't get the kind of grants that these other small presses get. So we publish, like the latest book that we published was by a Latino writer, grew up in the Lower East Side, but lives now in Morocco.
Mm.
And he's a great writer, Victor Hernandez Cruz. I knew him since he was 18. He's writing poetry.
Wow.
But he lives in Morocco now, and so we published him. And we published Jenny Lim and some other, writers. But we have to select what we're gonna.
Right, right, right.
I think the root for black writers, since the salespersons have taken over. As a matter of fact, Elizabeth Nunez, who's a great writer. I don't know if you know her work.
Yeah, I do, and she actually has a long time relationship with Hurston, Wright.
Okay, she said that what the publishers want now are girlfriend books.
Mm.
They don't mean Rita Dove. They don't,
Yeah.
they don't mean that guy. So this is a situation where they define. You know what George Bernard Shaw, always think about this. When you don't tell your stories, others will tell them for you, and they will vulgarize and degrade you.
Mm. Is there, as we close out, is there one thing that you would like for us as we move into, I cannot believe we're almost near the end of this year, but as we are seeing all these things with book bannings, as you're saying, the salesmen taking over this publishing industry, which has always really been inequitable, if we're being honest, with over 90% of books being published by white authors, if you're looking at big press. What is it? Do you have a word of advice or a message that you'd like to give to an aspiring writer?
Well, I think that you should, aspiring writer, I think the most democratic form is probably poetry. And that's how I began. And I think that's, if you want to test the waters with your talent, poetry, try some long form. And as far as book banning, Toni Morrison's a good friend of mine. As a matter of fact, I did a play called The Haunting of Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yes,
and
yes.
She was on her deathbed at the time, and she and her son gave us her apartment, and that saved us a lot of money because it's very expensive in New York to stay there while rehearsing those months.
Yeah.
So, I'm still in touch with her son, Dino, or Harold Ford, and I said, "What do you think about the book banning of Beloved?" He said, "Well, we're selling more copies." When you ban a book, people are going to be curious. What are they? Why are they?
I love it. I love it. And I purposefully avoided asking anything about that play in particular because I knew I would never stop asking you questions because that I have so many. But I hope that this means that I can reach out to you again for another interview. But I appreciate you. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I definitely am going to try to badger my daughter. She's actually she's an English major, and so I would love for her to come out and to meet you and share that experience with me this Sunday.
It's Sunday at the Corrett Library and Corrett Downtown Library in San Francisco. And hope I can get a chance to watch this. Is it going to be on YouTube?
Yes, I'm going to send you a link. Yes, I'll let you know.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds great. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.